So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. I hope more people will join soon. And you all who have already joined, you all are welcome to this sustainability seminar series. And today we have with us a very distinguished speaker, Professor Matti Kummu from Aalto University in Finland. And Professor Kummu did his PhD in 2008, I guess, from Helsinki Institute of Technology. And after then, he has done phenomenal work. If you want to see what kind of work he has been involved in over the years, you should check his Google Scholar. Very accomplished researcher, it's published in Nature and all sort of high-profile journals. And his main area of research is water sustainability and also food sustainability under changing climate. We all know, right, that there are going to be tremendous challenges. There are many regions in the world that are facing water related challenges or water related issues. WMO, I think day before yesterday, released a report highlighting the water challenges in the coming decades in different part of world. And water and food are two very tightly coupled. So this is very important topic that is core area of research of Professor Matti Kummu. So we are so glad to invite you, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation. I think uh, audience will love to sort of hear you, so I would not take a lot of time. So, Professor Kamit, thank you very much. And now stage is yours. You may start whenever you like.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Professor Vimal Mishra, for the kind invitation and an introduction. Yeah, it's my pleasure definitely to be here. I will share my screen so you can see my slides, and I provided the address to my slides to Falcuni. So if you want that, you can request that. Okay. So I hope you can see my screen well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So welcome from my behalf as well. As Professor Vimal Mishra kindly introduced, I'm working on a global food, water, and other kind of issues, looking, of course, the challenges, but mostly concentrating on the opportunities we have in the future to sustainably, from resources point of view, to produce enough healthy food. So my presentation, we'll see how long it takes, but please, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask at any point. I'm not able to see the chat, but if
so we will have questions probably once.
Okay.
Yes. So audience, if you have any question, please put in question and answer box or chat box, and I will basically take questions
Okay.
for Professor Matti Kummu.
Perfect. Sounds very good. Yeah. So I will first tackle a little bit the kind of background introduction to the challenges we have faced and the reason of those, and then I'll go to the opportunities I'll foresee to the near future. Okay. So let's get started. So you have probably been following the news, especially here in Europe. It was this German floods were quite major news in the summer. Then there has been a lot of drought spells, for example, in South America, also they're in South Asia. And then very rapid changing warming especially here in the north, where I'm actually here in the very northern part of Sweden at the moment, visiting scholar here in the subarctic research station. And here the warming has been really breaking the records over the last decades, including Greenland and other parts here in the northern hemisphere. Yeah, this is actually whatever trends we're looking at, whether it's this drought, global warming, surface temperature, biodiversity loss, tropical forest loss, freshwater use, we all see this rapid change. As Johan Rockström and William Steffen and many others, they call this great acceleration. So basically from 1950s on, all these indicators, what are indicating the state of our planet, they actually skyrocket. And there hasn't yet been a plateau where it has stopped. But at the same time, I think it's good to remember that we are, since 1950s, many of the, if we look at the other side of the coin, we are actually doing what the humans, we are doing quite well. For example, child mortality has dropped from 20 to 4%, hunger from 35 to 9%. Actually, first time in the history, we have more overweight people, obese people than underweight people. A few years ago, that passed, or kind of the turn was there. So there is actually more food than ever. Of course, it's not equal distributed yet, but still. And of course, 9% is still a high number, almost 1 billion people. So yeah. And basic education has doubled in terms of the ratio. People having access and actually completing the basic education. Child labor has dropped from 28 to 10%. So if I quote the famous Swede geographer, Dr. Hans Rosling, the world is getting a better place to live. So how these two kind of parts, we see the news that and see the trends. The Earth is doing worse than ever, but the humans are actually doing better than ever. And of course, these are very much interlinked. So we are kind of doing better than ever because we are taking advantage of the nature. And this kind of split to these two parts. That's our research, the main aim, trying to bring these back together so that people could do well, but then also the nature would thrive. Perfect. And as Professor Vimalsi Mishra already presented myself, so today I'll be talking about the sustainable food futures. I'm indeed an associate professor at Aalto University, Finland. We have there a water and development research group. We have been quite active on global issues, and particularly in Asia issues. I got my PhD from the research I did in the Southeast Asia's largest rivers, Mekong, and we have also been looking at all these large Asian rivers quite extensively. But more and more, of course, I think it's important to have the global perspective on these issues. So looking at the resources, scarcity, sustainable food systems, and so forth. And my passion really, of course, research, but then especially in the spatial analysis, combining different kind of global, semi-global data sets in a new way, and then trying to kind of illustrate those in an informative way. Good. So let's get started. Although I said that there is more food than ever, the development has been all but equal. So here is unpublished work of ours showing how the per capita food production has changed over the last 50 years or so. In these blue areas, it has more than doubled, meaning some parts of Europe, Russia, meaning that if the population has doubled in that time, the food production has quadrupled. So it has per capita food production has doubled. But then there are many areas where the situation hasn't been that good. For example, here in large part of Africa, the food production hasn't been able to keep up with the population change. Also, if we look at the South Asia in general, there has been quite okay situation. In some parts, the population has grown, like here, a little bit faster, but then mostly keeping the pace, the food production with population growth. And yeah, in a globalized world, then the trade has partly balanced that out. So this is another study of ours where we were looking the food availability and food trade. This is a little bit outdated, but it shows quite well how that has actually changed over the past, again, roughly 50 years. So here, if we look first the food availability, we see that then here's the yellow are critically low and the green is high. So if we look at 1965, for example, in Asia, large part of Asia were critically low food availability. Whereas if we look now, especially, yeah, all areas in Asia are doing much better. Still, the most challenges are now still in sub-Saharan Africa, where actually the situation has got worse in Congo and some other countries. And then if we look at trade, in a globalized world, the food is traded more and more. And here we have this kind of net exports, so who are exporting the food, and then net imports who are importing the foods. So again, if we look these same years and compare those, we see that in 60s, large part of the globe was actually exporting food. And that has changed dramatically. There are those exporters, large exporters, like the US, Brazil, Australia. And those are exporting more than ever. But most of the people are living in countries that are actually net importers. Most of them are low, but then in some areas, more than 90% of the food comes from elsewhere. Again, if we zoom in a little bit to Southeast Asia, we see that yes, India and other parts in South Asia are somewhat dependent on food imports, although they are quite self-sufficient. But then, yeah, Southeast Asia especially is exporting, a food exporter. So this is where we are now. So in terms of food, so there is more food than ever, but we have still areas, and of course inequality within the countries. And this is always this global view might mask this important in kind of local issues what are present in various parts. But then if we look the kind of so this is the kind of this positive side of the circle I showed at the beginning. Then if we go to the other part, okay, yeah, this I failed to mention. Yeah, so 6 billion people actually live in countries that depend at least partially on food imports. So food production, why I'm concentrating on the food production? I started looking at the water scarcity issues and really this, yeah. And I soon realized that, okay, as Professor Vimal mentioned at the beginning, the water, land, and food, they're very much interlinked. So food production is the largest single sector modifying our planet by far. So this is how I got into the food research as well. So I realized very soon, if we want to solve these global challenges, we need to focus on food and trying to find ways to produce food more sustainably. So we have been working on different parts of that. But let's see first. So what are actually the pressures? So high fishing pressure. More than 50% of the world oceans are under fishing pressure, and many of those under high fishing pressure. The land use, as you might well know, at least 1/3 of the world ice-free land is used for food production. Here is a map showing if it's dark green, it's mostly cropland, and if it's dark brown, it's the pasture. So here you see that if we look, most of the kind of arable land is already under cultivation. The white spots are either very cold, or then they are very dry, or then they are very wet. So basically all this kind of suitable land is already harnessed for food production, if you want to put it that way. And here again, if we can easily zoom in a little bit, looking the kind of the South Asia is actually quite different to others. Here is mostly cropland dominating, whereas then if we look, for example, to US, there's a lot of pasture, and also other like Africa. And of course, it's partly cultural issues, partly like this. For example, in Africa, there are a lot of these grassland, or these which suit quite well to the pasture areas. And water scarcity. Over 50% of the world population live under some kind of water scarcity at the moment. I'm not going into details to these different colors, those you can find from our publications. But basically, the red color means that the people are both suffering the water stress and water shortage. And it goes like a belt here in from California, Northern Africa. Middle East is seriously water stressed. In South Asia, Indus and southeast part of India are quite water stressed, but there are also areas which are not that severely stressed. And then going all the way to the northeast China. So serious issues. And then if we look a little bit more in details on the kind of why the food is such a issue and kind of what are the kind of issues in the food production. So of the habitable land, around half of the land area is for agriculture. And if we look for example, urban areas, 1% of the urban areas, over 50% of the people live in urban areas, although they occupy only 1% of the habitable land. And of this 50%, large majority is used by animals for pasture or for feed production. And still they produce only 18% of the calorie supply. So it's not the most efficient way of producing food. Especially here in Europe, US, a lot of discussion on the meat impacts on our planet. And of course, but I have to mention that in many areas, of course, it's quite good protein supply, and many areas like these grazing lands cannot be used for anything else than graze animals, and it might actually be beneficial for the biodiversity, these grazing animals. So I'm not saying that all meat production is bad, but the footprint, how it's currently done, is quite unsustainable. So these food crops produce 2/3 of the protein and 80% of the calorie supply. Good. And then if we go to the future, I have to check a bit the time. Yeah, population pressure. Population is still growing and eating more meat, and meat is of course having a bigger footprint on the planet. So here is a little bit outdated scenario, which I should probably update a little bit. This is a middle road SSP2 scenario of this IPCC things, showing that okay, we are hitting that 10 billion by 2050, but again, it's not equally distributed where the population grows. I'm from a country which is predicted to be quite stable over the last during the next 30 years or so. Then if we look, for example, Africa, it's predicted to double the population from 1 billion to 2 billion by 2050. So there are a lot of changes will happen. India is still growing, not that rapidly, but surpassing China in a few years, or by, if I am not incorrect, by end of the decade, to becoming the most populous country in the world. But then there are some countries like Thailand and large part of the Eastern Europe that actually the population has predicted to decrease over the next 20, 30 years. So these trajectories are also very different, which should be taken into account. Of course, climate change, impacts on crop yields. This is 3-degree warming. We are now hitting, if we are not able to halt the CO2 emissions or the greenhouse gas emissions, we are heading towards the 3-degree world. And that would mean that the crops yields are actually predicted to decrease. That has already happened in some parts of the US and Europe, that the warming climate has impacted on the yields negatively. Only some parts in the northern hemisphere, it has predicted that actually the warming might benefit the agriculture. But again, for example, if we look the South Asia, in parts there are predicted that even 50% negative impact on the crop yields in the 3-degree warming. And if we put all this together, of course, the future doesn't look very, very bright. We are already overstressing the planet in terms of resources. We cannot increase the use of land, water, or nutrients even to increase the food production. At the same time, we have more people. We are tackling with the climate change. So this all needs adaptation capacity. And then we were actually looking at another our publication with another professor from our group, Professor Olivares. And we were mapping the global resilience. So basically looking at adaptive capacity and then taking this kind of pressure, environmental pressure, what the areas are dealing with already. And we found that these areas which are most challenged by the future, Africa, Middle East, and Southeast Asia, those are actually the resilience for these changes is the lowest. So this is a quite kind of alarming situation. So where there would be most needed to adapt to the changes, there is least capacity to do so. And IPBES a couple of years ago warned that if we just continue, as now tens of millions of people need to leave their home, and this is the most positive. So of their prediction. So it can be also hundreds of millions of people. So there will be large changes if we're not able to solve these challenges. Okay, I was planning to have some questions here, but maybe we can save those to the end. So this was the first part of the lecture, but maybe easier to have the questions at the same time. So I'm happy to go back to any part of the presentation. Yeah, but as I mentioned at the very beginning, we're more and more in my research. We are looking the opportunities. So it's quite well understood, these challenges. Of course, it's important to maybe understand those more details, but I think it's much more important to concentrate on the opportunities we have to solve this challenging puzzle, how to use the resources sustainably and at the same time able to meet the increasing demand on food, among other things, of course. Good. I just need to drink a little bit and then I can continue. And these opportunities, again, I'll concentrate on the food opportunities, but these are very much linked to the water and other resources. Yeah, for example, the resources are reduction of the food waste. We currently waste 25%, 1/4 of the food in different parts of the food supply chain. Diet chain, especially here in Europe, is a big issue. Better management of nutrients. Then we have this better irrigation techniques and so forth. So there are a lot of different opportunities, which with most of them I have been doing some research. And so this was a few years ago, a first kind of national level estimation what we did, trying to understand the combined potential of these of some of these measures to increase food supply. So we were combining the yield gap closure of nutrients and water, food loss reduction and diet chains, and we found that we could double, with moderate implementation, we could double the global food production without using more resources than presently, and even triple the food production if the kind of if we would fully implement all these measures. But there are large differences between the countries. We did clusters on this, and found like five clusters, which one is an outsider, or not, only a few, kind of like Bangladesh and Yemen over there. But if we look, for example, in Europe case, where I'm from Finland, so our largest opportunity lies in diet chain. So we are eating a lot of meat, milk products, and by lowering that, we could have much more resources to produce food more sustainably. Food loss reduction, and then a little bit of yield gap closure. But then going to most of the Southeast Asia is in this green cluster, where as traditionally it's not, you're not eating a lot of meat there, and the food loss is also lower actually than anywhere else. But then the yield gap closure has the largest potential to increase the food production. And of course, the potential also varies a lot. In some countries, the food production could be increased quite a bit, 300-400% from current levels. But then there are countries like Bangladesh, Yemen, which I already mentioned, where potential is not huge. In Africa, yeah, the potential is quite high. And then if we go to the India and other parts, it's in sorry, yeah, around 50%, but still, yeah, quite a bit compared to current levels could be sustainably, or at least not using more resources, could be increased. But there is always the but. These scenarios were quite rough, and we assume the current level of resources use, which is not sustainable, as I already mentioned. So then another research we published last year in Nature Sustainability about the food production within planetary boundaries. So what we did there, we were first looking how much food we could produce if we would respect the planetary boundaries of biosphere integrity, land system, freshwater, nitrogen flows. And most of you probably know planetary boundaries, so they are kind of 9 boundaries, including these and climate change and some others that we should kind of not cross these boundaries in order to be able to keep the Earth as habitable and for humans. So we were first looking at how much we could produce food within the planetary boundaries, and we found that actually we could produce food only for 3.3 billion people. So yeah, over half of the world population would not be able to get food in that situation. But then if we would expand the food production sustainably within the planetary boundaries, but of course, yeah, elsewhere and other way around, like in other more sustainable ways, we could actually produce food more than 10 billion people. That's the kind of the population projections for 2050. And this would mean, yes, that we would be able to meet most of these scenarios. Those are again refined, and most, like now, the best guess is that we'll hit the 10 billion, and then the population will turn downwards. But again, I think it's quite interesting to see the maps here. So here is these two. So this is the respecting the planetary boundaries food production chains, and this is then kind of the expanding it. And here's the color scale, so from minus 70% to 70%. So if we would respect the planetary boundaries in large part of the globe, especially here in Asia, yeah, the food production would be decreased by quite a bit. But then if we sustainably increase the food production, then especially here in southern part of South Asia, yeah, the food production could be easily increased by 50-70%. But still, some parts of the globe, it still wouldn't be possible to even sustainably produce the amount of food that they are producing today, including parts of Europe, Eastern US, and many of these smaller islands that are not very small, but like Indonesia and elsewhere. So these are some of the opportunities what we have. So, but then there are of course these others, the innovative food technologies that are quite actively developed also in Finland and US. Israel is among the one kind of the forerunners here. Here, these include kind of vertical farming. There are some bioreactors, algae, and then artificial meat or cultivated meat, or however you want to call it. So basically lab meat. So we have a lot of different opportunities here, but this is still a little bit unsure. These all measures, they are very good in terms of resources use. Resources of land, water, nitrogen, other kind of nutrients, but then the energy demand is very high. So unless we can use solar or wind or some other renewable energy sources, then these are not very viable from climate change perspective. But there is a potential, and a lot of research goes on these, but maybe still quite marginal. Okay, I'm coming to an end of the presentation. A few slides more. So some of you might have heard this Eat Lancet Commission. 2 years ago, they published a big report, couple of articles in Lancet and elsewhere about this planetary health diet. This is a global perspective, so might be not relevant to everyone, especially those like me not eating meat. But then in general, I think this gives a good picture. So this is, and what I want to highlight here, or maybe I come to later. So basically what they found, that if we want to, they were looking at the health perspective. So basically trying to understand, not from the, like what I have been doing now, looking the environmental resources, they were looking the human perspective. So what is good for us? So they found that globally we are eating far too much meat, eggs, and starch veggies. And then we could increase a lot the whole grains, nuts, and many other, like the dairy foods, fruits, legumes. So many of these could be increased to get the health, like to be more healthy. And what they also found, that this health, it goes hand in hand with the sustainable use of resources. So I think that's the kind of the key issue here. So we don't need to make compromises with eating healthy, and kind of the from human and planet point of view. And again, here I would like to stress that then what I especially quite heated discussion always when I'm talking about these issues in the here in the Nordic countries, especially that then people are offended if their meat consumption, for example, is criticized. So again, we are working quite extensively here to looking the kind of trying to understand what part of the meat production is sustainable. So might not be that relevant to South Asian context, but in a globally it's more than relevant. So there's a couple of preprints what we are under review at the moment from our group. So basically here we looked the water perspective. So here on the y-axis we have the water consumption of the current food production globally, and here we have it's a bit small font. We have the livestock percentage of protein in human diet. So currently globally we are 34% of the protein comes from livestock, as around 34. I don't remember what I showed there on the other slide, but yeah, it varies from 35 to 40% maybe. And here we were looking then if we would decrease this level. So basically diet change scenario, we would decrease this, and then we would we would decrease the most harmful, kind of most impactful meat production and replace that with the most sustainable plant production. So basically what we were able to show here, that if we do this optimized way, we can reduce the water consumption quite rapidly. But then there is a plateau here. There are a couple of different scenarios which I'm not going to more details. But there, in both, there is a kind of it's leveling out, especially here in this scenario. It's actually start going up. So the vegan diet globally is not sustainable, or more sustainable than maybe reducing the meat consumption to half. And it's because a lot of meat production, a part of it, what they use for feed, for example, are byproducts from agriculture, which cannot be used by humans. And there are a lot of these pastures that are not suitable for farming. So part of the livestock is actually sustainable from resources point of view. And then another research of ours, which we actually submitted yesterday, we were looking the overgrazing globally, so on the grasslands. Basically looking, so which part of the grasslands, the trends, and also which part of the grasslands are overstocked, so where there's too many animals and then where there's low pressure. And we found that especially in Asia, large part of and South America, large part of the parts of the grasslands are actually overgrazed. Whereas then there is potential, at least to somewhat increase in Southern Africa and northern. But of course, here in the north, the production it's not very huge. So there are areas and parts of the livestock that is sustainable, and parts that of course it's unsustainable. So of course we are still working towards the understanding these issues. Here are some of the references, but before saying thank you, I'm still kind of I can recap a little bit. So what I showed here. So first I was concentrating on the challenges, so the pressure on resources, the future, climate change, population pressure. We have a lot of opportunities, but then also here there are still work to be done. So this is kind of what we're currently working on. Sorry, it's a little bit wrong order, but anyway. So basically, in our current research, what we are trying to understand, we know that there are these kind of planetary boundaries are transgressed. There's a lot of resource scarcity, but we don't really understand how, for example, this interaction between these different resources impacts on the overall sustainable use of those. So we are very much looking at the moment the integrating the planetary boundaries together, looking the interactions of those. And then in the resources point of view, the same. So basically what we are working is trying to kind of trying to fully integrate all these different measures together and looking the feedbacks, the flow on, and whether they are synergies or kind of we need to make them some so basically how those would work together, these different opportunities. And lastly, what is very important, of course, is to look at the social feasibility. So where these different measures, opportunities are socially acceptable, socially feasible. So that's what we are now kind of working as well. So, and at the end, of course, trying to integrate all this, which is quite ambitious, but we are building a global food system model where we would be able to integrate all these aspects and trying to build different scenarios and look at also the social feasibility of these different measures and where those would be kind of where each measure would be best fitted and so forth. Yeah, so this is kind of an overview of what we're doing and what we are up to in the near future. So hopefully you got some new ideas or new perspectives on these global issues. And then of course I was hopefully also then kind of reflecting those a little bit in the more context where the South Asian context, which is quite fascinating. Yeah, so now I can conclude with the thanks. Thank you everyone for, and of course open for questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Professor Kummu. This was very interesting, fantastic talk.